Good evening, everyone, and welcome to CancerBuddy Conversations. And we are excited to welcome tonight Massive Bio, which is a clinical trial hub. And we have two of their team members with us this evening. We have Fiona Evans and Brian O'Sullivan. So I'm going to see if they are here to join us. So they're not quite here yet, so we'll see if I can see them. I see Brian. There they are. Okay. And we have a really great conversation just because this is such a complicated topic of learning about clinical trials. So we're excited to, and here they are. Okay, wonderful. Welcome, Fiona and Brian. And can you hear us?
Yes.
Or hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Great.
Excellent.
So I guess we'll start out by just introducing Massive Bio. And I mentioned before that it is a hub that connects patients to the best treatment and clinical trials and that are available. And their team together provides a space dedicated to connecting patients to specific trials. And I would love to, we're going to dive into that and hear about how you do this at Massive Bio. But first, Fiona is the Director of Patient Relations and working with cancer patients and advocating for patients and groups to improve cancer patients' trial outcomes. And Brian O'Sullivan is a survivor, and he's going to talk about his own personal experience with mantle cell lymphoma and how he opted in for a clinical trial. So welcome to you both. And why don't we get started by, if you could maybe, Fiona, tell us a little bit about Massive Bio.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. Massive Bio was founded about 10 years ago by three people who had family members struggling with a cancer diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And they were frustrated by the lack of information that was available, the lack of options, and basically no clinical trial information available to their family members. So they came together and created Massive Bio. And we have created our own artificial intelligence-based tool that takes all the information from clinicaltrials.gov, and we input patients' medical records to that tool, and the AI sorts through all the available clinical trials to identify the ones that the patient is eligible for, and it matches them based on over 120 data points. So at the end of the matching, our oncology team, we have nurses and physicians working to review those reports and share them with patients so they can then decide on the best option for them. Mm-hmm. So it's a great way to inform patients about the options that are out there and available to them in the form of a clinical trial.
And does it cost the patients any money to be working with your team?
No, not at all. It is a free service. We are active in 12 countries right now. We're expanding to 17 shortly. But it is free to the patients, and it is a virtual service. So patients don't have to travel or go anywhere until they identify we identify a trial for them, and then they decide that they want to participate. They would then need to go to the trial site, to enroll. But we search for the trials based on the patient's travel preferences. So some patients say, I live here. I don't want to go more than 25 miles. We search in that area for them. Some patients say, I live in California and I can travel anywhere in California for a trial. So we would search, in all of California. So we search on the patient's travel preference and hopefully find them something close to home so there's limited travel involved.
And do they get their own personal physicians and specialists involved in the trial process with Massive Bio and your team?
We do recommend that.
Mhm.
When we share the report with the patient, if we're working directly with the patient, and we recommend that that patient share the report with their physician. We have our nurses and doctors that can, talk to their physicians. But in terms of a clinical trial, when a patient enrolls into that trial, they participate at the trial site.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't be with their local physician, but they would keep their local physician for their other follow-ups. And after the trial is over, they would continue to be followed there. So there is definitely some collaboration between the trial site physicians, Massive Bio physicians, and the patient's local physicians.
Okay, wonderful. This is all such great information because it's such a complicated topic,
It
and
is,
to navigate it when you're all already in crisis with the
right.
diagnosis. It's just so incredible that this company exists for patients and families. Brian, can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you opted into a clinical trial and why you chose that direction and so forth?
Sure. Well, yeah, I'm Brian O'Sullivan, and I I'll just start at January of 2021. I thought the pandemic was over. I felt perfectly fine. In fact, I felt great, thinking I didn't get sick at all. So I wanted to start the year off right and go to the doctor and get a physical. And well, after a few, excuse me, a few tests, it turns out, surprise, I didn't get COVID, but I got cancer. And I was like, where did that come from? I had no idea, and it's just my this white blood cell count was up, and I got diagnosed on a Friday night in May of 2021. Actually, my phone told me my disease. It told me my actual diagnosis, and it started my love-hate relationship with technology. But I did get diagnosed with this thing called mantle cell lymphoma, and immediately I went to Dr. Google for a second opinion, and I thought, wait, now my mother, who's down in Florida, was going to have to bury me because it said men in their 60s get diagnosed with this and live 5 to 7 years. And I thought, I'm only 49 for one thing, but let's just, that's where I was that night. It was a rough night for me. It was
Uh,
worst night. It had to be the worst night of my life so far. I don't know, but definitely the worst night of my life. But I did find hope that night. I saw. I found some support groups and with people with mantle cell lymphoma. It's something I never heard of before, but I found people in different stages of it, different stages of getting better, in remission, in active treatment, and just living with it, kind of watch your weight, what they call it. But so how I got to a trial was I originally I went for a second opinion with a doctor I found online who was suggested as an MCL specialist, the first oncologist. I said, I want to go for a second opinion. So I did find this doctor, and he told me he wanted to treat me a certain way using certain medications, using really new cutting edge treatments, BTK inhibitors. And I said, great. I put my trust and my faith in Doc, and he said, great. And then we're going to start in October, so October 21. So come October 21, I had actually driven across the country because I wanted to see the country before I died, because I thought I was going to die and I wanted to see, So I was on my way back, and I got this call from the doctor, and he said, Brian, the insurance company is denying your treatments. And, oh, what do we do now? I just want to get better. I was getting worse and worse. My numbers were going worse and worse. And of course, a lot of symptoms in my head were there, 'cause I think they're mostly head at this point. But he said, we're going to fight this. I'm working with your original oncologist. We're going to fight this. And I said, okay, Doc, I appreciate it. Thank you for doing our best. And a couple months later, nothing, still nothing. All these rejection letters coming to the house, rejection letters from the insurance. And I'm thinking, I paid my premiums for all these years, and now they just, when you get sick. So anyway, come the end of December 21, I got a call from oncologist number 3, who asked me to come in to see. He read about he knows my story, and they wanted to go see him. So I said, okay. And he told me the insurance company wants to pay for a basic chemotherapy for you, but when it fails, when it fails, then they'll pay for the cyst as a second line treatment. And I said, when it fails, when it fails. So they're setting me up for failure. And he said, well, they know not everyone makes it past the first round. And I thought, wow, this was when I really realized that this was how the insurance company was treating me and many others. I'm sure I don't know now, but he's told me about oncology. Oncology was how I knew this person at this point. At Memorial Sloan Kettering was running a clinical trial. They were sponsoring a clinical trial using the same types of treatments. And he said, if you're interested in this, I can email her right now. And I said, thank you. So he emailed her right there. And a couple days later, I got a phone call and I went in for my testing and we started the treatment. I started then. So we had to do more testing, more and more testing. And uh, I'll tell you what, at this point, my numbers were going sky high, very, very rough. And I just thought, wow, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to get accepted. Now I didn't even know if I was going to get accepted on the trial because that's I had so much rejection already. Then she said, well, I remember February 3rd, 2022, she said, Brian, you're accepted on this trial and you can start healing today using these treatments if you want. And I just put my head down. I just started crying because now I had opportunity to heal. And it was all this. I always say like 85% of depression just left my body that day, and I started healing that day. Using the types of treatments that the other three oncologists wanted to do. And it was.
And tell us about a little bit about when you made that choice to go into the clinical trial, and what do they explain that some will be in a controlled study group and the other, like, how do you know? You don't know which group you're going to go into.
No, this was not that type of trial.
It wasn't, okay.
Definitely the trial that they knew. They told me exactly what it was. This was using the meds.
Okay.
So yes, because it was the back end of the trial where it was definitely that wasn't a study group like that. No.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about if that is the case, Fiona, in a trial that patients opt into?
Yeah, generally with oncology and hematology clinical trials these days, the patients, there's different kinds where they know exactly what they're getting as far as treatment, and then there's kinds that they don't know if they're getting the treatment drug, but they are getting some kind of treatment. So it's not often that there aren't too many clinical trials in oncology and hematology that have a placebo where you're not getting any treatment. Most of the trials, if you participate, you're getting the standard of care treatment alone. So that means you're not taking the study drug, or you're receiving the standard of care treatment and the study drug. So either way, you're being treated. But some studies, depending on which ones, you don't know if you're receiving the new treatment that's part of the study or not. But in Brian's case, he knew that he was getting that. And it's been, 3 years now. And Brian is, aside from having a cold today, he's doing very well.
That's incredible.
Feeling great, and I'm grateful for so many people on my journey, including including myself. And I got a little bit of a cold, but I'm getting over that.
Yeah.
If I can beat this cancer, I can beat a cold.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's an incredible story, Brian, and thank you for sharing that. And just to kind of teach our audience and inform us of clinical trials in general, Fiona, can you tell us a little bit, just so you start to say about how most patients are not in a placebo group, but in just a standard of care. So would that be the care that they would get if they would just go in that direction with their own physician? So is it a similar, or would it be slightly different, or
no?
why?
The standard of care would be the same as you would get if you went to your local oncologist. So the clinical trials, in addition to standard of care, you would receive the trial drug, which is the one that is going through the approval process and research process to ensure that, so it can be approved by the FDA for use for everyone. The problem is these trials take a long time. So in order to receive that trial drug, participating in a clinical trial is a great way to get it before it's available. Like in Brian's case, his insurance company wouldn't approve that drug, even though it's out there, because it wasn't approved for his kind of disease at the time. So the only way he could get it was through a clinical trial, or if he received the standard of care treatment and failed that treatment, then he would have been able to get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of kind of what makes a patient, go through the clinical trial, but could, drop out, or what kind of barriers are in the way of patients getting to clinical trials?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of barriers. And those can be, first, just information, knowing about clinical trials. There's small community hospitals where the physicians don't run any clinical trials there, and they're not aware of the clinical trials that are going on. They don't have the resources to sort through all of them. There's thousands of clinical trials available right now just for hematology and oncology. So it's not possible for a lot of physicians to identify those trials for their patients. And for patients in big research hospitals, they may not be eligible for the trials that are available in those research centers. And again, those physicians don't have the resources available to sort through all of the available clinical trials. So that's just the beginning of a clinical trial journey. Once the patient, has the information about clinical trials, there's a lot involved in determining if that patient is eligible. Each trial has a lot of criteria. It's based on the patient's medical and treatment history, their disease type, their biomarkers, gender, age, lots of different factors that have to be checked before patients know if they're eligible or not. And then once they've been, they've determined which trial they're interested in and are eligible for, then there can be insurance barriers, there can be travel, lots of different things that pop up that can, slow down the process or stop the patient from enrolling at all. So at Massive Bio, we offer our service to patients, we offer it to physicians, it's always free, and we assist patients with those operational barriers. So it could be that, they have to travel to the site, and it could be a 2-hour drive, for example. So we can sometimes help them with the cost of the travel. Some clinical trials, flights are involved. Initially they have to go for additional testing. They may need to get on a plane. There's lots of resources out there that we can help them with. And sometimes the trials themselves offer some type of reimbursement or, travel help, lodging, food. They have some of those things available. So we help to identify and provide those things for the patients. Because we want not only to share information about clinical trials, we want to make sure that that patient enrolls in the trial successfully if that's something they're interested in.
Yeah, I've noticed this through the work at the Bone Marrow and Cancer Foundation over the years. Is one area is with clinical trials and patients, with the different barriers that you're speaking about, transportation, housing, just going back and forth from the site where the clinical trial is happening, and for them to get there. Is that often a dropout? Is there a percent of dropouts that you?
I don't have a percentage, but there can be definite issues there. And, when the trial staff are evaluating patients for their trial, they're very realistic. They say, okay, well, this patient lives 1,000 miles away. How realistic is it for them to travel that distance,
Right.
once a week or once a month or, 3 times a week, maybe, during the first part of the trial. So, it's really, it can be really challenging. And so Massive Bio really tries to focus on improving those situations for patients to help them actually enroll.
Mm-hmm. And so that's wonderful. And I would love to, we'll speak more about this offline, but just how, we can partner also in that area to support patients so that they can have the support of just all the ancillary costs that go into having treatment, transportation, housing, food, all of that, really can hinder a patient's abilities.
I love the for a second and just talk about how my treatment center, and I'll say it's Memorial Sloan Kettering, had given me a scholarship, for housing when I needed to go in the first couple of days at least, and then they were after a long day of treatment, they had paid the hotel, So for that, I was forever grateful. The grants, I should say, the scholarship grants, but I didn't. Yes, no. I'm forever grateful for the help. There's been a lot of help along the way.
Yeah, no. I mean, it takes an army to get through this, and a team of people coming together to provide all these resources and support.
A lot
and often people don't think about that. They just think about the treatment itself, but they need the whole organic
everything.
Yeah.
Food, the time off from work, like that. But there's been a lot of advocates for me, and that's why I spend my life advocating for others now and paying it forward.
That's wonderful. And in terms of like timelines, for clinical trials, often is there, a start date and that a patient has to wait to that start date to get into a trial if they qualify and they are able to do that?
Yeah, there are time frames. Trials started at a specific date, and they generally, when they start, know how long that trial is going to run before it ends. And another issue there is that, clinical trials have clinical trial sites in different areas. So there could be, for example, Brian's clinical trial may have been available in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, California, but each site doesn't open at the same time. So sometimes, there may be a waiting period until the site opens close to you, which is when that travel is really comes into play, because patients might start out traveling to New York to participate in the trial, and then that other site opens closer to them, and then they can switch back to that site. But generally, clinical trials have a duration time that they run, and some trials are until the patient, it could be forever. Some trials are until the patient has completed the treatment. It could be over so many months or years. And of course, there can be times where maybe there's some type of reaction where the patient can no longer participate in the trial, and then of course we would look for alternatives for them.
Can you explain a little bit about how that works for clinical trials? Like you're saying a start date, or it's at multiple centers, at multiple cancer centers, that the same clinical trial is occurring. Yeah. How does that work in terms of, obviously different doctors are conducting this trial. Do they all come together and collaborate on and working together, or is it done through a pharmaceutical company, or how is that done?
It's done through the pharmaceutical company, and they decide, if they're working at like Memorial Sloan Kettering, they connect with them, and they upfront discuss, okay, how many sites, how many physicians, and then start the ball rolling as far as when they open. Some may open at the same time, but some may not. And there may be a greater need sometimes for sites to open in another area. So let's say, there are multiple patients in a different area that, could qualify for this study. The study may be able to open a site in that area that wasn't previously planned.
Interesting. And does a patient, when they start a clinical trial, and I'm sure it probably has, where a clinical trial will stop because the results aren't, either for that patient specifically, the results aren't beneficial or positive, and they have to stop the trial?
Yeah, that does happen. Usually that happens very early on in the trial. So there are different phases of trials. Phase 1 is the very earliest phase. And then they go phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And phase 4 is like the latest stage where the drug is like almost approved or getting approved. So, there are times where clinical trials are not working, the way they're meant to or believed to, so they can stop at but it's usually early on. If something happens later on, it can of course happen. But we would look for alternatives, and usually the trials, the sites, the physicians, they look for alternatives for those patients as well.
Brian, when you qualified for your clinical trial, was that a fear of yours and what phase was the clinical trial in at the time?
Phase 3, yeah, phase 3 it was.
3, okay.
Back end of this. Was I afraid? I was more afraid of that denial coming again, that I was going to get accepted due to one thing or something like that, because I had already been getting denied, treatments. So that's what was in my head. It's like, okay. And really, my numbers were just sky high. I'll just give you an example. My white blood cell count was 2,000% higher than it should have been at this point. Wow. And I'm just going to die. But I'm grateful for those that advocated for me to get me proper treatments. And yes, I'm so grateful that part of my success is also helping future patients by getting these drugs approved, by getting these drugs, approved for, for every.
So that was a big part of your motivation, or that you also just the whole research process of giving back and to the cancer community in terms of being a participant in the trial.
Yes, definitely, and to heal myself as well. But
of course.
But yes, but also using my success to help the next person. And that's why, again, like I said about advocating, Fiona says I advocate, I'm down to 8 days a week where I'm advocating others, but that's it, but I just want to be there for the next person who was there for me. Someone was there for me,
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I find that, not unusual in this community, which is really beautiful in that they can, turn a crisis and just a huge, crisis in their life and turn it into something positive and wanting to give back and share their stories and help others. So I just find that so incredibly heartwarming and amazing. This whole community usually is like that.
Yeah.
Met some incredible patients through my work, and it's really inspiring. So thank you for doing that and sharing your story. Is there anything else before we end our live Zoom that you'd like to share about Massive Bio or clinical trials? Or
well, I think for me, I would like to share with patients that clinical trials are available at any point in their journey. So, there's a lot of misconception out there that, clinical trials are a last ditch effort. And if, you have to be on death's door before you should enroll. This is not the case anymore. Medicine is advancing so much, so quickly. There are lots of clinical trials available for patients receiving first line treatment, like Brian. You know, he didn't
Yeah.
have any other treatment. He started his first treatment as a clinical trial. And if patients do nothing else, they should at least look into clinical trial options. You know, even if they're starting a treatment with their physician, I think it's useful for them to look at the options, consider clinical trials as one of those options. And if they decide to enroll, fantastic. If they don't, that's fine too. But I think it's important to know all of your options and to understand that clinical trials are not, you know, for the end of your life. They're not the end of life choice. They are, you know, they can be a start to your journey. And I know I will ask Brian to share, you know, what some people said to him about participating in a clinical trial.
Yes, no, they said you're a lab rat. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's not. But no, it's not like that at all. It's just you know, it's again, yes, the next start of my journey. That's, you know, so February 3rd, 2022, when she said I accepted on the clinical trial, it was the second best day of my life, and the best day of my life was December 7th, 2023, when I had my third bone marrow biopsy, and that you are in complete remission. So, you know, I know this, that I put my trust and my faith in the doctors and the scientists who are dedicating their lives to helping me and helping others. And Master Bio, I have to say, is an amazing organization, because when you were talking about when you look at clinicaltrials.gov and I see all this and I'm just trying to get better, and all of a sudden it's like we just want to, you know, I can't focus. And if you don't have say you don't have a family, you know, help you. I mean, I've been grateful to have that, you know, but someone who doesn't, here's a company that's going to do that for free. They're just going to go right there.
Maybe I can't imagine it's overwhelming for somebody to try to focus on that and to try to navigate it themselves.
Yeah,
You know, a person just would probably give up many
right.
times, not even go and try to investigate it. And obviously, we all know, you know, knowledge is power. And for us to, you know, get this information, so the messaging of just learning more about clinical trials, and they can do that through Massive Bio, is so important. So that's, you know, an incredible opportunity for patients to turn to you guys just to have knowledge and understand the whole process and see what's out there for them.
I'd like to put this out there that I'm available for anyone. So anyone watching this, you can message me at there. And if you want to talk about my trial experience, and if you're looking to get on a trial, because I see some comments here,
Yeah.
people talking about being able to get in the trial and such like that. But if you want, I can assist you, you know, the best I can. I can tell you about my trial experience and try to help you get into a trial as well. So just reach out. I'm here for you. You can put my name in, Brian Sullivan, mantle cell lymphoma. You can Google that, and you'll
He's
see
all
me.
over. So you'll see him if you put his name in for sure.
But,
And I'm here for anyone like that. So
yeah. Well,
I know some.
thank you, Brian. That's an incredible offer.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were looking at any other comment, or did you go through any of those,
Yeah,
or
I mean, mostly it's just thanking you
yeah.
for sharing your story and just the, you know, agreeing with you the challenges of getting to a clinical trial.
I did see one about the link, but I didn't actually have a link for this video. I just put the link to your Instagram page.
Yeah. Well, hopefully through CancerBuddy, we're going to partner and have a clinical trial group on CancerBuddy in the very near future.
Yeah.
I've already started working on
Yeah.
it, and because it's just great information for patients to be able to get to you guys, and so we want to make that available on CancerBuddy
And
for all of our users to know you.
would love.
And yeah, so we're going to start on that and partner with that. And then also, you know, patients that need, you know, financial assistance and housing and all of that, I would love to, we'll work on that together to give another resource. But it's all great work and support, and patients need so much advocacy and support and navigating. So it's wonderful to know a company like Massive Bio. So we will be in touch and in the coming days and to start our collaboration on more information for patients.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, CancerBuddy, for, the wonderful work that you're doing and offering patients. It really is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's great. We'll be in close touch. So thank you for joining us tonight, and more great information for patients and caregivers. Okay.
Have a great
Bye.
Have a
bye-bye.
good
Bye.
night. Bye.